4-2 lead in the match for Vidit Gujrathi. Anish Giri still searching for his first win in the ChessBase India Originals Death Match 1.0. Off we go. Anish goes to his King's Indian. Now this is an opening that he does not truly believe in, but he plays it when it's a must-win scenario for him. And that's the situation for him right now in this game, in this match. D4, knight bd7, castles e5. Vidit is one of the best exponents of the Fianchetto system against the King's Indian. He really loves the space. He really loves to play against his opponent's plans and stop them. Prophylactic play. H6 is the move played by Anish. Not very popular. Rook b1, and there you can see Anish looking in the distance, trying to recollect his opening prep. a5 on the board, king to h2 played. And there you have Anish moving ahead with the pawn. These positions are strategically very risky for black because he's given up his center. Also white has quite a bit of pressure here. Bishop d7 on the board, and now queen to c2. And there you have Anish trying to soften up the king side with h4 at the right time. So this is exactly what black wants. He wants white to build up and then wants to break down the position with these little moves. And the engines may say that it's a big edge for white at some point, but in a game of humans, it's not always easy to play with that precision. Bishop e3 on the board. You will see that playing c6 is very tough because the d6 pawn is hanging. At the same time, the e4 pawn is under pressure from 3 black pieces, but for now 3 of white's pieces are also defending it. So it does look like an interesting position. I also like the fact that Anish has gained a lot of space on the queen side, and now he gains space on the king side with h4. Now for Vidit, it's always tricky to push g4, which is the move he wants to play, but there can be a sacrifice on g4 followed by knight g4 coming up. So he has to assess between the different possibilities here. One could be to just keep the pawns as they are, but then Anish could take and capture the e5 square for his knight. The other is to push g4, but then you have to be ready for some sacrifices on that square. The last option is to actually take the h4 pawn, which is not looking very appetizing, but sometimes it's moves like these which turn out to be the best move, and with it takes it. Objectively, this is a bad move. You can see there Anish literally can sense it, that this is a mistake, because now the knight can come to h5, the h4 pawn can be weak. He takes first on b5, makes a lot of sense, cb, and then goes knight to h5. Notice that the queen wants to pick up the pawn on h4, so Vidit has to do something about it. By the way, keeping this bishop on d7 could have been a better idea when you're trying for a kingside attack. bg5, that's a nice little move. The main point being that he wants to provoke f6 when the path of the queen is blocked here. I don't think Anish is going to play f6 at all. But then what does he do? Does he move his queen away? There's also a possibility of giving a check here somehow, because f4 is met with bishop f4. Both players down to 2.5 minutes on the clock. Anish needs to score a win here. He goes bishop f6, and this might be one of the best positions that he has gotten in this match until now. And Vidit defends his bishop with queen to d2. And what to do now? Goes knight e6 and tells Vidit that you must take my bishop, because once this is taken, look at this, the queen comes in, knight is coming here, the h4 pawn is hanging. This will not be very good. But Vidit has a very powerful move. He can go e5, and the point is that after de, he can take the queen. And also, if you play e5, and if there is bishop takes g5, hg5 and knight g5, this is not so great, because now the king is safer and white is better, but finding the move e5 is almost close to impossible here, because there's so much happening on the g5 square that naturally you would gravitate towards it. Oh my god, Vidit Gujrathi finds this move e5. Tremendous move there on the board. What to do for Anish? He doesn't want to take on e5 and trade queens, does he? But he can't take with the bishop here because his queen is hanging. Well, he takes on e5 with his pawn, but now the danger is actually gone for Vidit. He takes on d8, good move. Once again, Vidit is the one who sort of outplays Anish. Rook a d8, the position is still equal. But I think Vidit is now out of danger. He takes on f6, knight f6. Now the b7 pawn is a juicy pawn. You can just chop it off. That's a nice. Also, you can take the e5 pawn. He decides to take the e5 pawn, and Anish moves in with his rook. A very good idea now is to come back and offer a trade of rooks. No, he goes king g1. That was playable. Such a complicated position with two knights for black. Also, if we count the number of pawns, white is a pawn up here, but his pawns are all doubled up and weak. 1 minute 22 seconds for Vidit, 1 minute 42 seconds for Anish Giri. What is Anish thinking here? He's burning his time because he knows that this might be the critical moment of the game. He can play b6 to save his pawn, but with a rook on the 7th rank, if he can get his knights into the game, that could become very, very testing for Vidit. Now Anish down to close to a minute. He's 22 seconds below Vidit's time. But you can see there Anish wants to take his time because he thinks it's a critical moment. He goes knight f4, offering a trade of rooks. Think Vidit must take it. And then for Vidit, a4 pawn is also hanging. Takes, knight takes. He can take on b7, he can take on a4. Many possibilities here. But if you take on b7, there is knight h3 followed by knight f2. So that's the reason why Vidit has to be careful. Takes the pawn on a4. That's the best move. Knight to d6. Anish knows that his knights are very dangerous. He goes knight f5, giving up the b7 pawn, which is very risky, because now if you take knight h3 king here, knight f2 a4, knight h4 king g1, knight h3 king f1, somehow the white king is safe. White king is safe there. So Vidit can actually go ahead and take that pawn. But with all these two knights lurking around the king and the rook on the 7th rank, it is risky. So he plays h5, gives up the pawn. Maybe there was no need to give that pawn up. He wants to force Anish to take with the knight so that his knight goes behind, but he takes with the pawn. Good move there. And now Vidit takes on b7, but this allows Anish to take on h3, king g2, knight takes f2. This is getting risky because with the h pawn as a passer and the two knights here and some mating ideas, there you go, knight g4, and Vidit plays knight e4. Good move there. What does Anish do next? Maybe knight d4 check. He plays there. 14 seconds for Vidit, 28 seconds for Anish Giri. King f4. He checks with the knight. Comes back. Check with the rook. King e2. He doesn't leave the king. King g2, king e2. 5 seconds, knight f4, look at that position, king f1, mistake, he had to play king e1. And now rook h3 is a good move. f5 also looks strong. Anish wants to play f5, yes, 20 seconds, he pushes his pawn to f5. Knight to f2, the decisive error. And now, with these two pawns, this is very risky. a4, yes, with its pawn also running down the board. But here, these pawns on the king side along with the knight are also starting some kind of a mating attack. Rook f2 check, king to e1 check here. And Anish finds a way to win material because king c2, there is knight b4 and the rook would hang. So that's the reason why he goes king d2. But now the rook is lost. And Anish takes on b2, a6. Final calculation with, look at him using his fingers there. g2, a7. And he takes the queen. Vidit also takes the queen. Both of them queen. What an exciting game. King g7 is with its king weaker or Anish's. Bishop d5, there was no check in the position, but now the white king is just too exposed. And this game is going to end. Here, queen d3 check. Rook check. Check here. And it's a mate. It's a mate. He did it with this check. Over here, rook e2. And game over. Anish Giri has scored his first win in this ChessBase India Originals, and the score is now 4-3.